At least 29 Maoist leaders were killed in the Kanke district of Bastar division in Chhattisgarh on April of 2024.
Maoist terrorists have been killed in Chhattisgarh. 29 of them have been killed in the Kanker district, including top commanders. Let's go straight across to Arunima for more on
Chhattisgarh, where there's been a major Naxal encounter. 29 Naxals have been killed in Bastar.
News now from Chhattisgarh, where 29 Maoists, including a senior rebel leader, Shankar Rao, who had a bounty of 25 lakh on his head, were killed.
It is underway in India's central state of Chhattisgarh. At least 29 Maoists have been killed in a police encounter. The border security forces say the encounter took place in Chhattisgarh's Kanker.
Now, the recent data released by the Ministry of Home Affairs have suggested that there has been a 70% decline in the Naxal-related cases from 2013 to 2022. And also, deaths related to Naxal-related cases have been down by 75%. Now, this has been a remarkable feat achieved by the Government of India in tackling this menace of left-wing extremism and that of Naxalism. Now, hearing all of these things, a lot of questions might come up in your mind. That what is left-wing extremism? What is this Naxalism? Or what is this term known as Maoism? And where all these things originated? What is the genesis of this? What is the timeline of it? What is the trajectory of this? And how the government has been able to control left-wing extremism in India? All these questions we'll be trying to answer in this particular session. Hello, my name is Preetpal Singh, and today's topic is Naxalism and left-wing extremism in India. Now, in order to understand this left-wing extremism and Naxalism in India, we have to trace back to the socialism and communism philosophy which was given. Now, for that, we have to understand a very prominent German intellectual, 19th century German intellectual known as Karl Marx. A very popular figure and a very prominent personality. Now, Karl Marx, in his works of Das Kapital and Communist Manifesto, talks about theory of class struggle. Now, in this philosophy given by Karl Marx, that is socialism and communism philosophy, Karl Marx says that capitalist society is divided basically into two groups. One, he calls them as haves, and one, he calls them as have-nots. So haves are the capitalists in the society, and have-nots is the proletariat class, the most marginalized section which is exploited by the haves. And the solution of this problem in the capitalist society is given by Karl Marx, and he talks about armed revolution, where the have-nots will come into an armed revolution and will topple the haves of the society and will take self-rule. And that is nothing but what we call as communism, right? So this is where all this political philosophy came into being. And after that, we will see a lot of application of this philosophy. First application could be seen in 1917, when Russian Revolution takes place. Now, a very prominent figure, that is Vladimir Lenin, will lead this Russian Revolution. And we will see that the workers and peasants would be combined and an armed struggle would be taking place. And a socialist form of government will be adopted in Russia and monarchy will be abolished. A second application of this could be seen in 1949, when Chinese Revolution will take place under the leadership of Mao Zedong. Again, a very popular figure in the history of whole world. Now, this is where the genesis of Maoism will start, because Mao Zedong will use the philosophy of Karl Marx but will tilt it in its own way. And that is where the Maoism philosophy will begin. So he will use the workers and peasants to topple the government and establish People's Republic of China. So here again, in this revolution, we will see the philosophy of Karl Marx taking its course. And this is where left-wing ideology and left-wing extremism will start in the entire world. Now, since we have understood all of these things, we have to talk about left-wing extremism in India and how it manifested in India. Now, before that, one thing which I want to make very, very clear is that how a revolution starts. Now, for any revolution to start or for any revolution to sustain, there are three important key pillars which are required. First is that of ideological base. Without ideological base, a revolution can never manifest. So one thing is ideological base, which is very, very important. Second pillar is the cadre support. So people's support is very essential for revolution to sustain or any philosophy to sustain. And third is prominent leadership. Prominent leadership again gives a way to the cadre, shows the way to the cadre. So ideology, cadre support and leadership, if all these three things are present, a revolution can manifest in its own way, and a revolution could sustain even for many, many years, for many, many decades. Since Naxalism has been sustaining in India since more than last 50 years, these three things are prominent in Naxalism. That is why it has been successful to sustain itself in our country. Now, since we are clear with this, we have to start with the left-wing extremism in India. Now, socialism as a philosophy has been prominent in India even during our independence struggle. So prominent leaders like Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru or Subhash Chandra Bose, they were very much inclined towards the socialism philosophy. But mind you, they were not inclined towards the communism philosophy. They were inclined towards socialistic ideology, right? And even Mahatma Gandhi is talked about supporting the socialism ideology in our country, right? But this is not all, because 1925 Communist Party of India will be formed. Of course, during that period of time, Indian National Congress was the most prominent political party in the whole country, but CPI will start working in India from 1925 onwards. And with this base in mind, now let us understand how left-wing extremism manifested or started in India in different phases. Now, to understand it even better, we have divided the spread of left-wing extremism in 3 different phases. Now, of course, Government of India has not given the list of these 3 phases, but for our academic understanding, academically we have divided it under 3 different phases. First phase is from 1967 to 1973. And first phase is the very prominent one, because this is where the Naxalism root will be laid in our country. And this is where the Naxalism will start in our country. So in 1967, a class conflict will start against the moneylenders, against the landlords, against the policemen and businessmen in a very prominent place, that is Naxal Bari, which is there in Siliguri district of Darjeeling, West Bengal. So this is where a class conflict will start under the leadership of Charu Majumdar, Kanu Sanyal and Jungle Santhal. And also what we will see is that class conflict along with a lot of violent agitations will begin in the Naxal Bari region of West Bengal. And eventually we will see the spread of Naxalism will start from here. Because this violent clashes they started in the Naxal Bari region, we term this problem as Naxalism, because eventually from Naxal Bari region it spread to the entire country. That is why we call it as Naxalism. But what will happen in 1971? In 1971, our then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi will launch Operation Steeplechase, again to reduce this manifestation of Naxalism which has started in our country. And during the same period of time, you will see the emergence of CPIM. Now, CPIM will form All India Coordination Committee for Communist Revolutionaries. Now, this will act as a pressure group for the support of Naxals in our country. And also during the same period of time, you will see the emergence of CPIML, that is Communist Party of India, Marxist-Leninist, which will be started by Charu Majumdar and Kanu Sanyal together. Right? So this is the first phase where Naxalism began its spread in the entire country. It started in West Bengal. Eventually in the surrounding regions, we will see the spread of Naxalism taking place. And this is the first phase of 1967 to 1973. Now in the first phase itself, Charu Majumdar, a very prominent leader, will die in police custody. Now in 1970s and late 1990s, till that, we will see the spread of second phase of Naxalism. So first phase from 1967 to 1973, second phase from 1970s to late 1990s we could see. Now in that second phase, Naxalism will spread throughout India except the western parts of our country. And in this period, when we see a leadership vacuum taking place, another leader will emerge known as Kondapalli Sitaramayya. And in April of 1980, a People's War Group, that is PWG, will be founded by Kondapalli Sitaramayya. And they will start attacking the police. Now the counter to that will be the formation of a special task force known as Greyhound, which will act as an anti-Naxalite elite commando unit, which will be formed by the then Warangal IPS officer known as KS Vyas. And eventually you will see that in the states of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, the current Telangana, there will be a reduction in the Naxal-related violence through police modernization, through proactive counter-insurgency measures taken by the state police and of course by the central government as well. And they will be able to minimize the Naxal presence in the region. Now, since we have understood this, there is a triple junction theory which does the rounds in a lot of academic journals, right? This triple junction theory talks about how Naxals are able to spread themselves in different regions. Now, there are 3 characteristics of a fertile land for Naxals. Now, a land or a piece of land which is interstate boundary and which is a difficult terrain and which is having simple tribal population, if these 3 things are present in a particular region, it becomes the breeding ground for Naxalism and is the most fertile land for spread of Naxalism. And the counter to this is the combat tactic of guerrilla warfare, which a lot of state police forces have been inculcating and have been implementing. Now, you must have heard of this term known as Red Corridor. Now, Red Corridor is nothing but the area infested by this Naxalism related activities. In the second phase, we are talking about the spread of Naxalism in the entire country. But what we need to understand is that what were the issues of the people because of which they were supporting the Naxals? Because Naxals were gathering a huge support from the tribal population of these regions. Now, what was the reason or what were the issues prevailing in those regions which were forcing the tribals to go towards Naxalism and to have a bent towards Naxalism, right? The first issue was that of reservation. In the same period, in 1970s, 80s and 90s, reservation issue was very, very prominent. Second issue which was very prominent was of Ram Janmabhoomi. Third issue was that of LPG reforms. Now, because of these issues, certain sections of population in different states of our country, they were agitated, right? And certain sections, they felt marginalized and alienated. Now, that alienation was the breeding ground of Naxalism. Now, Naxals were able to spread in those areas where people were feeling alienated, and they were able to hire them into their groups, and they were able to make them or transform them into Naxals. So from tribal population, people transformed from being tribals to Naxals because of these particular issues in 1970s till 1990s, which were very prominent. Now, eventually, when this second phase will start to die down, we will see a lot of internal problems and internal issues beginning to start between the Naxals themselves. So these internal issues were in relation to land distribution, in relation to the leadership question, in relation to the ideological shift as well. And because of these issues, we will see the third phase, that is from 2004 till present. Now, in the third phase, in 2004, we will see a grand meeting organized by the different factions and different groups of Naxals. And they will form a new grouping, or they will form a new organization which they called as CPI Maoist, that is Communist Party of India Maoist. Now, this particular organization became very, very strong because a lot of small factions, they joined together and formed this unit or formed this organization. Of course, in 2009, the CPI Maoist was listed as a terrorist organization under UAPA. So this is a banned organization in India, that is CPI Maoist. Now, it has been functioning through guerrilla warfare, and they have been very active in the forest belts of that of Chhattisgarh, Bihar, Jharkhand, Maharashtra, Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, and several other states as well. And this region is what we call as a red corridor, where the Naxals have infested themselves and manifested themselves and have increased their spread. Now, in the third phase, we are seeing that the Naxals are having cadres as well. The Naxals are having resources, and their ideology has also become very, very strong. The Naxals are very strategic and systematic in their approach. The Naxals have been indulged in a lot of cases, a lot of violent cases against the police officers, against the politicians, and a lot of deaths are taking place in this particular third phase, where the Naxals have become very, very strong. That is why from 2004 to 2010, you will see a lot of deaths related to Naxal-related violence. And this is the worst phase in the entire Naxal-related incidents from 1967 till now. This 2004 to 2010 has been the worst phase of Naxalism in our country. And during the same period of time, our former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh said that Naxalism is the single largest internal security problem in our country.
Problems of terrorism and left-wing extremism constitute two major challenges that our society and polity face today.
This is because from 2004 to 2010, a lot of deaths happened due to Naxalism. We will see Naxalism being spread in 18 states, 218 districts, and expanse of Naxalism increased and increased. And they will also start moving towards western region in this particular era. But 2010 onwards, we have been seeing a lot of proactive measures taken by the government of India and a lot of state polices as well to counter this Naxal-related violence and Naxal-related incidents. After that, that is why we see from 2012 till 2022, there have been reduction in the cases related to Naxalism in our country. So, of course, a lot of actions have been taken by the state police, a lot of action has been taken by the central government, and a lot of action has been taken by the state governments as well. What are these actions? We'll learn about them in a while. But first of all, we have to understand about the major causes because of which Naxalism was able to spread this much in our country. Now, the causes can be divided amongst three different reasons. That is water, forest, and land. So these three reasons are very prominent because people, tribal people in our country, in many of the regions, they were deprived and marginalized in these three areas. That is Jal, Jungle, Zameen. Their rights in relation to these three things were snatched, or they were not getting rightful ownership of these three things. That is why they were supporting Naxals, because they thought that Naxals are taking up our demand and they'll be able to give us rights to our resources. Now let us understand all the causes one by one. First cause is that of tribal discontent. Now, because of frequent displacements of the tribals, because of low socio-economic indicators, because of poor amenities, because of deprivation in relation to culture and economic aspect as well, tribals have been feeling alienated. Now, if the tribals are feeling alienated, of course they will support Naxals, because they will feel that Naxals are taking up their issue and Naxals are voicing their concerns as well. That is why tribals will shift towards Naxalism. Also, second prominent issue is in relation to administrative vacuum and governance related issues. Now, because of no electricity, no water, lack of livelihood, poor healthcare, because of these many of the reasons, and administrative vacuum in these many of the regions, because of this, the tribals and the population have shifted their support to Naxals. And a lot of governance related issues like corruption, unequal resource distribution and injustice have also played its own role. And the third issue is that of economic cause. So economic issues like unemployment, poverty, inequality, a reduction in infrastructure, no livelihood, underdevelopment has been very, very prominent in manifestation of Naxalism in several regions of our country. Also, there have been several reasons in relation to the coordination as well. So lack of coordination amongst state police and the central government, interstate police coordination have been lacking. Because of these reasons as well, because of lacunas, Naxalism have been able to use these lacunas to their own advantage. Because of this, Naxalism has spread in our country. But what is very important for us to understand is that in the last 10 years, what has been the steps which have been taken by the central government and the state government, because of which we have been able to control left-wing extremism, because of which we have been able to control Naxalism in our country. Now, the reasons for decline of Naxalism can be divided into three different pillars. First pillar is that of institutional strength of our police forces and armed forces. Second pillar is that of ideological counter, so providing an ideological counter to the ideology of Naxalism or the ideology of left-wing extremism. And third is the administrative governance and economic reforms initiated by both central government and state governments as well. So on these three pillars, the reforms are taking place. Now, the first measure is the Ministry of Home Affairs National Policy and Action Plan, which have been working since 2015. Again, to counter left-wing extremism, there have been an initiative of aspirational district program, again to incentivize districts, again to transform districts in our country. The most prominent doctrine is the Samadhan doctrine, towards which the government is working. Now, Samadhan doctrine is very, very prominent. S stands for smart leadership, A stands for aggressive strategy, M stands for motivation and training, A stands for actionable intelligence, D stands for dashboard-based key performance indicators, H stands for harnessing technology, A again stands for action plan for each theatre, and N stands for no access to financing. Now, combining all these things, if the state government and the central government take decisions and take certain actions, remedial steps, definitely we will be able to counter Naxalism. And this strategy have been working since last many years. And that is why we have been successful in countering Naxalism to a very large extent. Also, Eklavya residential model schools have also played a very important role in uplifting the social economic status of the regions which have been manifested or infested by Naxalism. Now, one innovative practice could be seen by that of Chhattisgarh government. So in 2005, Chhattisgarh government started with Salwa Judum, that is anti-insurgent vigilant group, where the local tribal groups will be given training and support by the central government, and they will have to counter the Naxal related violence. Now, of course, a lot of controversies were there surrounding the Salwa Judum as well, but this shows that 2010 or 2005, 10 and 12 onwards, a lot of proactive measures were taken by the state government and central government in countering this Naxalism. Countering Naxalism became a very prominent strategy for our internal security doctrine in this particular era. In the current era also, we see a lot of proactive measures being taken by a lot of stakeholders in countering this Naxalism and left-wing extremism in our country. Now, since we have understood that how Naxalism manifested in our country, how Maoism came into being, or how left-wing extremism spread in our country, what is very important for us to understand is that even after these measures, why has Naxalism not ended in our country? And what should be the way forward? The way forward should obviously be to hit the root cause of Naxalism. And the root cause is alienation. Because people feel alienated, they support Naxals. If we are able to eliminate alienation in our country, that no group in our country feels alienated, we will be able to basically cut the pipeline of support towards Naxalism. So we need to involve alienated sections, alienated masses into the mainstream to counter this. And we have to work on 3 different fronts. First is institutional, second is ideological, and third is rehabilitation. We need to strengthen our institutions, that is state police and the central government armed forces as well. We need to also give a counter ideology towards that of Naxalism. So counter ideology needs to be presented that Naxalism is not the solution. What the solution is a democracy. What the solution is that you get elected, you come into the parliament, you demand your rights, or you work towards achieving what you deserve. Third is that of rehabilitation. That means Naxals who have converted and come into the mainstream and they want to be rehabilitated, we need to provide them skill development, we need to provide them rights and entitlements in that of land and forest as well. So the resources we need to provide them, and we need to upskill themselves so that they can merge with the mainstream society, and Naxalism as a problem can be solved altogether. So I hope you understood or gained a new perspective from this particular session. All the very best and have a nice day.